So, good morning, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the course. This is our last traditional lesson, indeed, because next week it's going to be the autumn holiday, and the week after it's going to be the intensive week, which is going to focus on your presentations. I'm also planning just one last lesson there as well, so that the full-on day is kind of organized and filled in. But I'm still thinking about what to share with you in the topic of conflict and cooperation. So that's it. Please, if you have any trouble with getting into your group, starting your work, finding a topic or anything that you might have some sort of struggle with, let me know, and I'm at your service to be helping it out. And I'm hoping that every single person, because there were some problems with the registration, some people came later, I hope that everybody has got a team now, everybody got organized into groups, and everybody knows what to do, how to do it. On the intensive day, we will meet on a Wednesday. We will have a full-on day together. And then after 4th of November, if you remember, and then afterwards, the lessons are going to be not done anymore. So we will have empty Tuesdays after all, which is really sad. But the next time we will meet is going to be in the first week of the exam period, when you will have the first appointment of the oral exam. I will give 3 appointments altogether, 1 in December and 2 in January, so that if those people who want to get rid of the whole exam experience earlier, then we will have it before Christmas. And then for those of you who want to leave a little time for preparation, you can come on an extra 2 occasions in January too. So, ladies and gents, let's just jump right into it. I've planned to show you Chernobyl, the international conflict of Chernobyl, as a last conflict. And I wanted to choose this one because, and I'm very sure that you have seen it or heard of it at least, that last year the very famous series of Chernobyl came out. It's an American and British production, so we always have to take that one into consideration as well, where the film's origins are coming from in terms of framing and agenda setting and media kind of conceptualizations. And then afterwards, after kind of sharing with you what inspired the topic, and it was indeed this series which kind of focused on how the distortions of information occurred. But once again, I'm saying it that it's a British and American show, so there might be some distortions from that side too. And of course, then we will kind of break down what happened actually in 1986. And then later on, because it was the only available holistic kind of news media coverage, I've chosen the British news, how they presented the news, because the other ones weren't translated into English, and I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, unfortunately, or it was just not holistic enough. So I've chosen a bunch of typical and very traditional British kind of sources, The Guardian, and the rest of them as well, that the Financial Times, and a lot of them as well, The Sun, so tabloids as well, how they presented the news and how they were informed in Britain, and how the whole thing, as main European mediums, they kind of presented the case. This is what is going to happen today, and I'm hoping that you will kind of get a better insight of how things were covered back in the days. Okay, just to put you in the mood a little, I wanted to show you the trailer of the HBO what was that, a series that was coming along last year. Let's take a look.
Well, look good we did.
Oh, can you hear it?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, it's up to them. Justice was done. See, a just world is a sane world. There was nothing sane about Chernobyl.
I'm pleased to report that the situation in Chernobyl is stable. In terms of radiation, I'm told it's the equivalent of a chest X-ray.
No, Chernobyl is on fire. And every atom of uranium is like a bullet, penetrating everything in its path. Metal, concrete, flesh. Now Chernobyl holds over 3 trillion of these bullets. Some of them will not stop firing for 50,000 years.
Tell me how to put it up.
You are dealing with something that has never occurred on this planet before.
Cut the phone lines. Contain the spread of misinformation.
What will happen to our boys?
The pain is unimaginable. In 3 days to 3 weeks, you're dead.
You can see it, but you cannot touch him. Do you understand?
What happened on the night of the accident?
Asking the right question will get you the truth. There is no truth.
What happened then? What happened after? All of it. All of it. Madness.
Okay, practically this was the trailer. You did get an insight how this British and American show was somewhat put into images and into visual images. I'm very much hoping that you could hear me very well at the beginning of the video as well, just because my laptop was very much on a low volume, but I'm hoping that things were fine quality. And let's move on right now. Let's just break down what happened throughout this whole story. So it was a nuclear power plant with 4 reactors in Chernobyl, and it was near the city of Chernobyl, practically not right in it, in a former USSR area. And reactor 4 actually exploded on the 26th of April, 1986, and they call this one the Chernobyl case. Practically, even though it was like next to Chernobyl, but still it is called this way, or it's spread this way. The only nuclear accident in a civilian nuclear power plant ever was this one. So this one was the first ever, and hopefully the last one too, even though we're still like using a lot of atomic nuclear energy, because this one is pure, and if it doesn't explode, this one is the best for the environment, because coal mining and the other energies are not good for the environment, or very, very much detrimental. This one would be the purest form of energy, but still, it was if it explodes, this one is going to make the most crazy effects on people, animals, and nature itself. It is considered the worst nuclear disaster in history, of course, and this is one of the only 2 nuclear energy disasters in the world. The other one was in 2011 in Fukushima, in a disaster in Japan. But this one was even more kind of dangerous on the scale of disasters, nuclear disasters. Now, it caused 31 deaths instantly. So within the nuclear power plant, 31 people died instantly. And still, they say that the Soviet government was only admitting to these 31 people's death all the way through. So as more and more information was leaking through the media, the Soviet government was only kind of admitting to these 31 people's death and nothing else. However, it may have caused over 300,000 deaths. I will talk to you about further issues, for example, people who either accidentally aborted their babies, or they aborted their babies on purpose because they knew the baby would not be healthy when they come to this earth. A lot of people died in cancer, and so many cancer deaths are kind of connected to the explosion. A lot of people's lives were somewhat tortured or like distorted, in a sense, because they were either born with double limbs or single limbs, or somewhat handicapped because of the radioactive stances. So that's what happened, and upwards of 20 million people were exposed to radioactivity. So you can tell that even though it's 31 people dying instantly, it's 300,000 deaths, which were instant back in the day as well, throughout cancer deaths and other kind of very serious illnesses. And in the end of the day, it's like 20 million people being affected by this whole kind of accident. So it was the largest one in history as far as nuclear incidents go. It cost $400 billion as well, and 200 years of total cleanup is yet to come. Some people say even more. So in the video, they said a lot more. I was kind of checking out a lot of scientific sources about it, and they all said 200 years to clear up for an accident like this, which is going to be crazy because only approximately like 30, 40 years are past. And right now there is something we call catastrophe tourism, and I will show you images as well, how they want to make money out of Chernobyl even today. And they started these catastrophe touristic journeys to Chernobyl. They're kind of bringing you there on buses, and then they will show you around, and you can look around and stuff like that. Instagrammers, I will show you, they are advertising Chernobyl and this catastrophe touristic journey there. And they say that it's totally safe. I don't know, but to me the fact that 200 years is yet to, this is what is defined in order to get rid of the radioactive substances there. I don't really find it super safe, to be honest with you. They say that they are giving you garments and stuff like that so that you can safely walk around. I'm not sure. I wouldn't go myself because I just don't know whether to trust it or not, and you might shorten your life by a good 20 years if you catch something. The accident started during a safety test. I'm sure that you have heard of this one. It was commonly used in the Soviet Union. Safety tests were required in big power plants like that. The test was a simulation of an electrical power outage. So if there is a power outage, they are kind of tested that one. How would the power plant react to that one? It was just a safety procedure practically. And the experiment started on the 25th of April to determine how long turbine produce power after the loss of electricity or loss of power. So if there is a power shortage, how long the turbine can still function. And that was practically the test about it. The reactor was known to be unstable at power levels under than 700 megawatts, and that's what they were trying to kind of test out. What happens if they're kind of, when does the power plant get unstable? How long does it take, and how much power shortage or power cutoff can it tolerate? Practically, this was the test. 3 such tests had been conducted since 1982, but they had all failed, unfortunately, to provide a solution. And on this 4th attempt, the test was delayed by 10 hours once again. So they started it. They noticed that the power plant was not in a safe position, and so the people who were executing the test, they said that it was not safe. We need to stop it. We need to delay the test once again. It's not good. However, as you can tell, there was a huge governmental pressure on them. So 3 times the test had failed, and it showed bad results of such a huge power plant, which was like the crown of the Soviet Union that they built something like this. And it was really much of a matter of prestige, that this 4th test would be successful. And they started off by a 10-hour delay, and already the people in power, they were really, really angry and firm that this 4th test had to be successful. The test supervisor then failed to follow the procedure, and they created a very much unstable operating condition, which resulted in the uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction. That's what happened practically. Now, first of all, they started it off that the power levels, they started to bring it down, simulating as if the power shortage was coming and the electricity wouldn't be provided to the power plant itself. And so they kind of brought it down. As I've mentioned, it's 750 megawatts that it can kind of tolerate, or that's I'm hoping it's megawatts. I'm sorry if I'm saying stupid things. I was terrible at physics. And so it was 750. And under that one, it gets unstable. That's what they wanted to test. So they brought it down to 500, and then suddenly at 12:30, it was in the evening at night, the power dropped down to 30 megawatts. That's really, really little, practically, very little. And the most control rods raced to increase power levels as well. And suddenly, due to the fact that they dropped the power down so much, an emergency shutdown was initiated, and the reactor got out of control. So they brought down the power, and then suddenly the nuclear kind of substances started to raise to levels which were 100 times than the acceptable limits. So practically it got absolutely out of control. April 26th in 1986, we're talking about that one, at 1:20 a.m., 24 a.m., the plant exploded. So the whole test, of course, was not successful. In the series, if you watch the HBO series, they are kind of talking about it, that there are two people who are executing the test. We may never know if that was, how it happened or what it happened, but in the recreation, that's how they made it. And so there are these two people, and one of them is like an absolute youngster, and he was just like checking out in a booklet what to do with it, and he was just kind of checking out this like a book of advices, like what to do with that, or instruction books. And the other one, the older gentleman, he kept saying that like it's unsafe, it's not good, it's not gonna work, it's gonna be like disastrous. And the leader of the test was continuously saying, like a governmental person, that like the test needs to be executed, do it, and then they did it, and that's what happened. 8 tons of fuel were ejected into the atmosphere. We can imagine that it's a bunch, including plutonium, graphite, moderator, iodine, and cesium. So, like very, very serious substances went into the atmosphere as well. And radioactivity, a lot of radioactivity was released. So practically the disaster occurred. That's when it happened. We can say that the whole Chernobyl disaster happened because of an ill-conceived and ill-executed equipment test. And there was a high pressure on the people in order to make this 4th test possible and successful. The operators allowed the reactor to become unstable before the power surged out of control, leading to 2 explosions practically, and a fire that was highly radioactive, and the atmosphere was somewhat exposed to the whole thing as well. The operators of Unit 4, this is what exploded of course, under pressure they conducted the test as I've mentioned, and when the reactor exploded, it happens in the film as well, or in the series as well, they show it that they send their 2 people after the explosion, like something was wrong, something happened, and they sent 2 workers down there. And they straight away, like in the series, they just melt away. That's what happens to them. And then firefighters come along and they're not even kind of in the film. They're not even kind of let known of what is going on. They just say that there is a big building which is on fire. So they go there with their normal equipment, and they started to kind of, clear up the place and doing stuff like that. And then they start touching things like these ashes and stuff like that. And in the series as well, but they say that the series was kind of put together by interviews with persons who survived or whose families were kind of affected. And they show one firefighter who holds a piece of graphite, and his hands just kind of melts down to the bone, and the whole kind of it's like an agonizing death really of radiation. That's what they showed as well, but that must have happened as well because they kind of, that's what all literature says as well, that so toxic sources were kind of freed during the explosion. The operators, of course, they were in total denial about what happened. They refused to believe that the reactor could have exploded. They said that it was impossible. Only when they started finding graphite, that's when they started saying like that came out. That's not okay, and that might have exploded. Okay, so engineers they kept on pumping water into the reactor in order to cool it off or cool it down. It didn't quite work, so it was on fire for days. Many bureaucrats and technocrats from Moscow descended to Chernobyl's in hours after the accident, and they actually refused to accept. So they were in constant denial. They said that it was not an explosion, it's just a fire. They didn't accept that a 9-year-old reactor could have exploded, and as I've mentioned, it was the crown of the Soviet production practically, and it was huge back in the days that they could plan such a power plant, and it was just a matter of prestige that a 9-year-old power plant would not explode. So that's what they communicated, that it did not explode, even though it did. Okay, it was considered the showpiece of the Soviet industrial powers as well, as I've mentioned, yes. Okay, this is the image I wanted to insert in here when the two workers were set down, and they noticed it, that the reactor was actually exploded, and there's a hole on it, and then they melt away practically. When everyone came to realize that Unit 4 did actually get destroyed and exploded, the radio contamination was getting worse. And so many people were saying it, as I've noticed it. Of course, it was in tabloid news as well, but they said it just as they say it regarding the coronavirus as well, that it was just because it's invisible. So many people did not take it seriously. So because radioactivity is not like a monster, or is not like a murderer, or is not like something that can be tangible, or like you notice it, that there is something wrong. It's like people did not want to leave their houses. So many people were like, you can't see it. It didn't happen. You can't feel it. It's just not how people reacted. That like, okay, we need to go. First of all, it was not communicated, and second of all, with coronavirus as well, you might have heard it. Like in the US, they had a case in which there was this guy who was a denial of coronavirus, and he wanted to throw a coronavirus party, and then he died at the age of 30-something because he got infected and his body didn't react well. So this was also a problem, that it was not communicated well enough to take care, and for that reason, people did not even take the whole illness, or the whole thing seriously. Denial was replaced by the Soviet government's propensity for secrecy, so they were very much secretive about this whole issue. Now, in the morning of the 28th of April, the radiation levels set off the alarms in a power plant in Sweden. So they tried to keep everything in a hush-hush. However, in Sweden, their power plant, the Forsmark nuclear power plant, did kind of show that radioactivity was in the air. Workers in Forsmark reported that there was something really wrong to the Swedish Radiation Safety Authority, and on that day the Swedish government started doing their examinations and contacted the Soviet government to inquire whether there had been a nuclear accident, because they found major kind of nuclear radioactivity in their area. There were huge storms back in the day and stuff like that, and the wind and all those things kind of brought it up to Sweden, and so their power plant did show that there was something wrong in the air. The Soviets straight away denied it, and it was only after the Swedish government suggested that there was some sort of a problem, and they suggested it, that the International Atomic Energy Agency checked it out, and they started doing that. It's like a European Union, not back in the days, but a European body, an international body, to check it out, what had happened. That's when the Soviet government admitted that there was an accident in Chernobyl, but they were very much not like distorting information there, according to all information today. At first, the Soviets only conducted a minor, or actually like admitted to a minor incident that had occurred. And once they began evacuating the people, like 100,000 people, the full scale of the situation was realized by the global community. So they did realize after the evacuation started and the information started leaking that the case was super, super dangerous and very much real. So there was an evening TV program, news channel, on the 28th of April, so 2 days after the incident had happened. You can tell that it was just a 20-second program, announcement, 20-second program. You can tell that whenever there is a huge accident, hours or maybe minutes after it, the news are already full of it. Now they managed to kind of keep it a secret for 2 days, and then only a 20-minute announcement was coming along, and that's what they said. This was the first piece of news from the Soviet government. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. One of the nuclear reactors was damaged, so they didn't say exploded, just damaged. The effects of the accident are being remedied Assistance has been provided for any affected people. An investigative commission has been set up. This is the whole thing. It doesn't really say that nuclear power, nuclear kind of substances are in the air. People need to be evacuated. A lot of people died. A lot of people will die. They just say that and there was an explosion. Of course, it's just talking about damage and that the issue is being remedied. Practically 20 seconds. That's it really that they admitted to at the beginning. On the between the 2nd or 3rd of May, so we are already in May, that's when the real evacuation started properly. 45,000 people were evacuated. On the 4th of May, another almost 170,000 people were evacuated. Later, another 200,000 people were evacuated. And in the end, it comprised 4,300 square kilometers that needed to be emptied. So you can tell only this, when the evacuation started and the information started leaking that people needed to leave their places, that's when the global kind of arena of news and people, they started having doubts that it was only just a damage or only just a minor incident. They started realizing that it was huge. Okay, if you remember, this scene was coming from the hospital scene, and they were kind of talking about it quite a bit, that the nurses and the doctors, they were kind of very much like touching the garments as well of the firefighters too with their bare hands, and of course they were in the long run getting the whole thing into their bodies as well, unfortunately. Let's see the consequences. The number of potential deaths arising from the disaster. There are like 27,000 cancer deaths worldwide. Altogether, they say that there were 300,000 deaths that can be kind of tied, not just cancer, but other kind of illnesses as well that can be tied to the Chernobyl disaster. So altogether, they say 300,000 deaths were kind of resulted, or that's what resulted in the accident. Almost 1 million premature deaths. Some of them, many of them were not deliberate. However, they also say that thousands of otherwise wanted pregnancies were being terminated. So those women who realized that they had babies ill and affected and mutated in their bodies, they decided to terminate their pregnancies. The Chernobyl Forum stated that between 5 and 7% of the government spending of the Ukraine is still going to Chernobyl, or still related to Chernobyl in a way. So 5 to 7% each year, the whole of the government spending, taxes and stuff like that, is spent on Chernobyl in order to kind of remedy something that happened, 34 years ago, practically. It's a significant economic impact as well. Of course, first of all, we will be dealing with the human impact because that's what is the most important one. But we need to mention the economic impacts as well. It's almost 2 million acres of agricultural land, and once again, almost 2 million acres of forest was taken out of production, and they're unable to use it still. Agricultural production costs have risen due to the need of the special cultivation techniques as well. Agricultural animals, pets, they were shot dead as well, for the reasons that they might have been radioactive, and if you consume that animal, then you're kind of taking that into your body as well. Yes, the overall economic loss is estimated to $235 billion in Belarus. That's just one country, but of course the Ukraine and a lot of other countries were affected as well. And yes, social benefits and stuff like that is still like millions. I'm really sorry about it now. Some very disturbing images are coming along just to show you a few cases. So I told you that people and animals became somewhat like distorted in a way, and doublings and deformations were very, very common, unfortunately, in the period. Doublings as in, like, for example, that animal on the right, it's like a cow or something, it has got like extra limbs coming along. That animal, which might be a donkey, it's like the face is completely damaged. Doublings, as I've mentioned, yes, these animals have got double heads, the cat as well, and both the other one, which is like a donkey, horse, cow, something like that. and children, unfortunately, those children who were born, and they're the women who didn't terminate their pregnancies, and they actually gave birth to children who were like affected in the belly. They were kind of born with some disabilities, which I'm about to show you. Just a few pictures, but it was... Oh, you can't see them. Oh no, I didn't insert them correctly. Oh yes, I did. Sorry. Yes, one of them, another one, and another one, and another one. Let's not even watch it more. Limbs, bodies, in like disabled or either like grown together or not grown out or something. Very horrible problems occurred. Yes, it happened that the DNA molecules were kind of affected by the radiation, and it caused damage as well. 400 just in 1990, around 400 deformed animals were born, and they were shot dead straight away because these deformities were so severe that some animals didn't make it only for a few hours, but these abnormalities, they had to be executed, these animals, because they were fearing that the animals would be still radioactive, and if you eat them or consume their milk or something, it would be bad for you as well. Okay, as for humans in Europe, 10,000 deformities have been observed in newborns because of Chernobyl's radioactive discharge as well, and 5,000 deaths among newborn children, so those children who were born but straight away they died because of their bodies not being strong enough to carry on. We did have a few cases in Hungary as well, even though the whole Chernobyl kind of nuclear cloud, it was going upwards, it was going north. There were some cases of cancer that they still tied to that one because there was a jump in Hungary too, because we are neighboring countries, of course. They said, and we did see a few in, I was born in this period, like a couple of years later, and a few people I know from other borders, from the Ukrainian-Hungarian border, we did see, and we may never know whether it was that one or not, or it's that effect, but a few cases I did have some acquaintances who either didn't have the fingers grown out, or a full-on limb, like a full-on wrist and hand was not grown out. I did have some classmates too, so we may never know if it was Chernobyl or not, but in that period it was a high jump in the number of deformed bodies and cancer death as well. But of course the main area being affected was the Ukraine, where it all happened. That's what I mentioned, ladies and gents, that they started making money out of the disaster, which is itself a disaster in my opinion. If you want to check out catastrophe tourism, there is a webpage called www.lunatravel.co.uk, which is like showing the destination of Chernobyl as a very exciting catastrophe touristic place. I'm not sure if it's still functioning. I'm not sure if the link still works, but there are a bunch of catastrophe tourism web pages where they are taking you by buses to areas where you shouldn't be taken, like ever. They are putting out messages like that. Chernobyl is a fascinating experience. A visit here takes you into an abundant world which remains fixed in time and largely unchanged since that day in 1986, as if it was, like a mysterious magical world of Disneyland. It's just that it's a land of horror, and you might be still affected. This is what I wanted to show you. We've got a bunch of very, daring, I don't want to say anything more than that, Instagram ladies who are here in underwears, standing in the middle of radioactivity or like a nuclear power plant. I'm not sure if it's that dangerous or not. You may never know, but all of the literature says that it takes 200 years to get rid of it, and only 30-something years passed. That lady who is getting out of a radioactive swimming pool, touching the handles of it, I don't know how long she will live, but I don't think much longer. So it's just like crazy. And these people are followed by maybe thousands or maybe more. And these people are kind of spreading the word that you need to go to Chernobyl to check out such a thing. And of course, catastrophe tourism is always huge because negativity is something we are very much interested in. And I'm wondering how many young people were, triggered by this this idea that like, yeah, that's really good, and there is this pretty girl coming out of the radioactive swimming pool, that's what I need to do. I think it's very, very silly to be kind of, I think it should be banned, to be advertising Chernobyl. I know that it's a financial income, and I know everything, and still I'm highlighting it that many people say that it's not that dangerous anymore, or if you're given normal garment or safety garment, it's okay, but still I'm wondering how serious it can be. Okay, let's see the media coverage. So yes, I did mention all of this. Let's see how the whole Western world managed to react. Okay, how did the daily papers in Britain handle it? That's what I'm trying to say. 29th of April, that was the first one. Of course, it happened on the 26th. We know that one. 29th of April was the first one when the papers were in doubt whether something happened or not. So there were like these reports coming along in Britain. As I've mentioned, in Britain, only in Britain did I find like a holistic overview of the whole case, and only in Britain did I find it in English. So that's British media that I'm going to be showing to you. So they heard it that an accident of an appalling nature happened, and they knew that it happened in the area of the Ukraine-Soviet Union. The Financial Times started off quite normal, that like a serious accident hits nuclear power plant in Soviet Union. That was it printed a map as well to show where the whole case happened and how the Swedish authorities were also affected. So it showed like a map where the radiation was carrying on with its journey as well. Also the Times, it was saying like huge nuclear leak at a Soviet plant, overheating of nuclear fuel raises fear of possible meltdown, European alarm, Moscow acts. So these were the big headlines that I found in the Times. It was also printing a map as well, with arrows showing the track of the radioactive cloud. It was very similar. Of course, these are quality newspapers. They were very, very similar to each other. And they were also sharing it that Britain was safe, says Watchdog Body. So practically they were kind of sharing or highlighting the local relevance as well, that Britain was untouched. The Guardian was lower in temperature, so they were just saying that radioactive Russian dust cloud escapes. That's what they said, so it was not very much dramatic in a sense, and it was kind of sharing facts about the nuclear accident itself. The Daily Telegraph, it also remained cool, with a straightforward account of events so far. So back in the days, they were just listing when it might have happened, how it might have happened, and where the radioactive cloud was going. Now, if we wanted to take a look at the popular press, which I'm going to be sharing with you in a minute, so like tabloid press, I'm thinking, the dimensions of the accident were much different. So the stories were based on no more or not proper information, but what other papers were kind of what other press was showing, and headlines as well. And they started, giving these very dramatic headlines as well. For example, the Mirror said Russia's cloud of death. The Star said atom cloud horror. And the Daily Express said nuclear disaster radioactive cloud heads for Britain. So practically you can tell that the tabloids are often very much either dramatizing. This was a dramatic situation, by the way, but they were very much like creating panic as well. It's heading for Britain. It was not true. Britain was not affected. I'm not sure what was affected in reality, practically, because I'm not an expert, but it didn't kind of go into Britain. It went into Sweden, so it was not affected. The Today said atomic leak. The Sun said red nuke disaster, implying for the fact that the Communist Party is red. Yes, absolutely. So 1,000's dead. So they were very much dramatizing it. 30th of April, so a day later, the Financial Times was getting information from American satellites, and it showed that the roof of the reactor had been blown off. So they practically were not getting information from other little papers, but they were getting information from proper sources, satellites and stuff like that. And they showed that the roof of the atomic reactor was off, so they practically got to learn the information that it did explode. It's not just a damage, it's an explosion. So the Financial Times editor was trying to kind of get information about it, and he wrote that those I spoke to yesterday about the problem of fighting a major fire in such a reactor expressed nothing but horror at its magnitude. No one had any ideas. That's what the Financial Times was kind of bringing down, which is quite a serious matter, because that one is a quality paper, not a tabloid one. It pointed out that Chernobyl reactor was of a type that had no containment of the kind of demanded authorities in the West. So it was kind of sharing that the problem was really real. And still the Soviet Life magazine was bringing down that everything is totally safe, of course. The Times had a diagram as well, and they were saying that the circumstances happened by extraordinary negligence of people and of the part of the operators. So they started kind of pointing out who were responsible for the whole thing. The Telegraph kind of said as well that 25,000 people fled from the nuclear power plant's disaster. Help us, plea by Moscow. Meltdown could kill 10,000 in 10 days. So they started realizing that the things were serious, and that's when the quality newspapers also started to be dramatizing as well. The Guardian already was spoken about it, reported that American pressure on the Soviets was releasing all the available information of the accident. So they started kind of sharing it that the Russians had a pressure on, and they started to be secretive. But the secrecy didn't work because the American pressure kind of brought it out there. Of course, the Americans would be very much in their best interest to be kind of, like bringing the Russians down on their knees. So these are the maps that they were kind of sharing, and how Britain could be affected or not, how it was moving along as well. The tabloids still very much dramatizing the Daily Express, nuclear nightmare, nuclear paranoia, suicide quads on edge of hell, try to fight the fire. So you can tell that it was very, very seriously, very dramatic. 10,000 dead in atomic horror. So horror, paranoia, suicide squads who are going there. It was the Sun as well. It was trying to kind of dramatize. Of course, that's when they're going down into individual stories. A pretty British student trapped inside the Russian nuclear disaster area pleaded to be rescued last night, and the Mirror reflected on this one, saying on the front page the same story. This pretty British girl, please get me out, mummy. So you can tell that the tabloids ones, of course, they might have been all true, but still they were very much like showing the story from a different point of view than the other ones. 1st of May, most papers reported the news programs of the Soviet television, which showed the Chernobyl reactor with fire on but under control. With the fire out and under control. So the Soviet newspapers were still kind of showing that the fire is gone, everything is fine, and the situation is under control. 1st of May. So the Soviet authority was kind of still showing that there was an accident, nothing happened, just a damage, just a fire, things are under control. Okay, the Mirror, that's also another one about the hysteria as well. Now will the whole plant explode? It cried. A second nuclear reactor exploded in Russia yesterday. Panic is spreading, panic in the countries which border on the Soviet Union, panic in the streets, panic over a whole continent. Like the repetition of the word panic, it's also like a very, very typical kind of creation of panic indeed, but they were showing what was going on. Last but not least, because it was just going on, what I wanted to share with you, and I think that was quite a bad issue, was that, where am I going? Sorry about that. It was the fact that the Russians, yes, that's what I was trying. The normal parades, 2nd of May parades, were held in Moscow and Kiev as well, which was really, like a lot of people were brought into the streets, and they were not, on May Day. It was very, very silly to have done it, but they wanted to show it that things were fine. And the Express was bringing it down as well, that as nuclear ferry goes on, or grows, parade goes on, which was, like the government tried everything to show that things are fine. So they brought the people out on the streets in Moscow and Kiev as well, which was not very smart, to be fair with you. This is when they were trying to show as well that people were absolutely under control. The Soviets were kind of measuring everybody's radioactivity levels, and things were fine. Okay, and last but not least, what I wanted to share with you is that they were saying that all the British paper were saying that the Soviets had done their best to hide what was impossible to conceal, and they were trying their best to keep the parades going, everything else going, but in the end of the day, it all turned out. And the conclusion is that whatever the treatment of the accident in the British press was, there was not one word unsympathetic to the suffering Soviet people. They were very much sympathetic with them. They were trying. They were kind of blaming the government, and they were trying to kind of show sympathy towards the people, as I've noticed as well. They were very much anti-Soviet government. Of course, in this case, it's very much impossible to be pro-Soviet government because they did it. That's why it happened. And the Soviet Union did its very, very best to hide it, but it was not hideable anymore. Very much as well, the Soviet Union was trying its best to keep everything slow and hidden. The tabloids were kind of over the top with their productions, but they were very much sharing true information in a very dramatic way. And they knew everything that the Soviet government wanted to hide practically. So, ladies and gentlemen, after all this information that I wanted to share with you, I'm very curious what you've heard about it. I know that a bunch of you come from these areas as well. I'm very curious how it came down in your own countries. And let's just move into teams and talk about everything that had happened, because I'm very much curious what you think about the whole issue. Thank you so much for your attention. It was lovely being with you, and let's meet in teams in a minute. Bye-bye.